In a hospital room where hope seemed lost, a miracle unfolded. Amara, a young girl trapped in a coma, stirred awake, her faint whisper, "Nia, you, you led me back," shattering the silence. This heart-stopping moment, born from love and defiance, is just the beginning of a story that will grip your soul. How did Nia, a housekeeper with nothing but stories and faith, pull Amara from the edge? What dark secrets threatened to keep her silent forever? Stay with us to uncover the truth. It's a tale you won't believe until you hear it all. We'd love for you to subscribe to our channel for the latest stories that inspire and amaze, and drop a comment to share where you're watching from. Your support keeps these tales alive, and we can't wait to take you deeper into this unforgettable journey. The air in Englewood, Chicago, carried the weight of forgotten promises. At dusk, the South Side neighborhood exhaled a gritty symphony, distant sirens wailing, the low hum of a corner store's flickering neon sign, and the rhythmic clatter of a train rattling past abandoned lots. Cracked sidewalks stretched like scars across the streets, lined with sagging brick buildings that seemed to lean into each other for support. This was Nia Thompson's world, a place where hope was a fragile thing, easily snuffed out by the cold realities of poverty. Yet at 24, Nia carried a fire in her chest, a stubborn, radiant belief that goodness could still bloom in the shadows. Nia moved through the slums with a quiet grace, her worn sneakers crunching against gravel as she navigated the familiar maze of her childhood. Her skin, a deep ebony, glowed under the fading sunlight, and her braided hair swung gently with each purposeful step. She wore a faded denim jacket, its cuffs frayed from years of use, and a smile that could disarm even the weariest stranger. To the kids who trailed her like ducklings, she was a superhero without a cape. Miss Nia, who braided their hair for free, slipped them candy, and taught them to read under the dim glow of a street lamp. To the elders, she was a daughter of the block, the one who checked on them when the world forgot. But to herself, Nia was just a woman trying to honor her mother's legacy, a woman who refused to let the slums define her. Her mother, Lottie, had been the heartbeat of Englewood until cancer stole her away when Nia was 16. Lottie's voice, rich and warm, used to fill their tiny apartment with stories, tales of ancestors who turned pain into power, who wove hope from the threads of despair. "Our people," she'd say, her eyes gleaming, "they danced through storms and sang to the stars. You carry that strength, Nia. Don't ever forget." Those stories were Nia's inheritance, more precious than gold, and she clung to them like a lifeline. They were why she stayed in Englewood, despite the gunshots that sometimes pierced the night, despite the hunger that gnawed at her when money ran thin. She believed in the light her mother saw, even when the world around her felt like endless dusk. Nia's days were a blur of survival and service. By morning, she worked as a housekeeper for the Reynolds family, a wealthy white couple who lived in a Lakeview mansion that gleamed like a mirage. The job paid enough to keep her lights on and buy groceries for the neighborhood kids who showed up at her door, bellies rumbling. The Reynolds' daughter, Amara, was the only reason Nia didn't dread the long bus ride across town. 10 years old, with chestnut curls and a laugh like wind chimes, Amara had a heart as big as Nia's. She'd sneak into the kitchen while Nia cleaned, begging for stories about river spirits and starlit dancers. Nia would oblige, slipping her an extra cookie, their giggles a secret rebellion against the mansion's sterile silence. Those moments were a balm, a reminder that joy could exist even in the crevices of a hard life. But Englewood demanded more than Nia's daylight hours. After her shifts, she'd return to the slums, her backpack stuffed with secondhand books and art supplies. She'd gather the kids in an empty lot, turning it into a makeshift classroom under a tarp. "Words are power," she'd tell them, her voice steady as she handed out pencils. "Write your dreams and they'll carry you farther than these streets." The kids listened, their eyes wide, because Nia wasn't just talking, she was proof. She'd read to old Miss Clara, who couldn't see the print anymore, and drop off soup for Mr. Jenkins, whose legs had given out. She didn't have much, but she gave everything. Tonight, as the sky bled orange and purple, Nia stood outside her apartment, a crumbling walk-up with peeling paint. A group of kids tugged at her jacket, begging for one more story. She laughed, crouching to their level. "All right, one quick one," she said, her voice a melody against the evening's edge. "Long ago, there was a woman who walked with a river in her heart." The kids fell silent, hanging on every word, as Nia spun a tale of a spirit who guided lost souls home. Her mother's words flowed through her, each syllable a spark that lit up the dark. But as the story ended, a chill settled in Nia's bones. She thought of Amara, who hadn't laughed in weeks. The car accident had stolen her light, leaving her in a coma, trapped in a hospital bed across town. Nia had visited once, her heart splintering at the sight of the girl's still form, tubes snaking from her arms. The Reynolds, usually so polished, seemed frayed, their grief tinged with something Nia couldn't name. She'd asked to visit again, but Victor's curt nod felt like a dismissal. Still, Nia couldn't shake the feeling that Amara needed her, not as a housekeeper, but as something more. As the kids scattered, Nia lingered under the street lamp, its weak glow flickering like her thoughts. She clutched the silver locket her mother had left her, a tiny anchor against the world's weight. "Mama," she whispered, "show me how to help her." The wind stirred, carrying the faint scent of rain, and Nia felt a pull in her chest, a call to act, to fight for the girl who'd become like family. Inglewood had taught her to survive, but Amara's silence was a new kind of battle. Nia squared her shoulders, her resolve hardening. She'd go to the hospital tomorrow, stories in hand, and she'd speak to Amara's soul. The slums had forged her, but it was love that would lead her now. The hospital room was a tomb of sterile precision, its walls a blinding white that seemed to swallow sound. Machines hummed with a mechanical heartbeat, their screens casting a pale glow over the small figure in the bed. Amara lay still, her fragile frame draped in a quilted blanket embroidered with delicate flowers, now faded from weeks of unchanging vigil. Tubes snaked from her arms, tethering her to life, while a faint mist clouded the oxygen mask over her pale lips. The air was thick with antiseptic, a sharp, unnatural scent that clung to the throat. Outside, the world spun on, but here, time was a cruel spectator, ticking away in the relentless beep of the heart monitor. Nia stood at the threshold, her denim jacket slung over one arm, her heart pounding like a drum against her ribs. She'd come straight from her shift at the Reynolds mansion, the bus ride a blur of worry and whispered prayers. The sight of Amara, so still, so unlike the girl who once giggled over stolen cookies, clawed at her insides. She clutched the locket at her neck, her mother's voice echoing in her mind. Love can reach where hands cannot. Nia took a shaky breath and stepped inside, her sneakers squeaking faintly on the polished floor. The room felt like a void, as if it existed outside the world she knew, a place where hope was rationed like water in a desert. Victor and Elaine Reynolds stood at the foot of the bed, their silhouettes rigid against the fluorescent light. Victor's tailored suit was creased, his jaw tight as he stared at the monitors. Not his daughter. Elaine's manicured fingers scrolled through her phone, her face a mask of detachment, though her eyes flickered with something unreadable. Grief, perhaps, or something colder. Nia's presence barely registered. They glanced at her, then away, as if she were part of the furniture. She'd asked to visit, expecting resistance. But Victor's curt, "Do what you want," had been a hollow permission, laced with the exhaustion of a man who'd already surrendered. Dr. Helen Carver, the lead neurologist, hovered nearby, her clipboard a shield against emotion. Her voice was clipped, clinical, as she addressed the Reynolds. "The latest scans show minimal brain activity. We've tried every protocol, medications, stimulation therapies, even the AI diagnostics. There's no change." She paused, her lips thinning. "We're approaching a point where we need to discuss long-term care options." The words landed like stones, heavy and final. Victor's shoulders stiffened, but he said nothing. Elaine's phone screen dimmed, her fingers freezing mid-scroll. Nia's stomach churned. Long-term care sounded like a euphemism for giving up. She moved to Amara's side, her hands trembling as she reached for the girl's limp fingers. They were cool, fragile, like porcelain left in the frost. Nia's throat tightened, memories flooding back. Amara's laughter, her wide-eyed wonder at stories of river spirits. That girl was still here, Nia told herself, buried somewhere beneath the silence. She pulled a chair close, the scrape of its legs a small rebellion against the room's oppressive quiet. "Hey, sweet girl," she whispered, her voice soft but steady. "It's me. I'm not going anywhere." The words felt inadequate, but they were all she had. Nia glanced at the Reynolds, expecting them to leave, but they lingered, their presence a cold weight. Victor's eyes met hers briefly, sharp and dismissive, before he turned to Dr. Carver. "What about the experimental trial in Boston?" he asked, his tone more transactional than desperate. Carver shook her head. "It's not viable. Her condition is too unstable." Elaine sighed, a sound that carried irritation rather than sorrow, and resumed scrolling. Nia's jaw clenched. She wanted to scream, to shake them, to demand they see their daughter, not just the problem she'd become, but she swallowed the urge, focusing on Amara. This wasn't about them. It was about the girl who needed her. She leaned closer, her voice dropping to a warm, intimate cadence. "You remember the story about the river spirit?" she began, her words weaving a thread of defiance against the room's despair. "She was born from the tears of the earth, guiding lost souls with her song. She'd sing, and the water would glow, showing the way home." Nia's voice trembled but grew stronger, each word a lifeline cast into the void. She didn't care that Dr. Carver's pen paused, or that Victor's brow furrowed in annoyance. She spoke for Amara, for the part of her that might still be listening. The heart monitor's rhythm didn't change, but Nia felt a spark, a conviction that her words were reaching somewhere deep. She squeezed Amara's hand, willing her to feel the love woven into every syllable. "You're not lost, sweet girl," she murmured. "You're just resting. I'll keep talking till you're ready to come back." The room remained cold, the machines indifferent, but Nia's resolve burned brighter. She'd return tomorrow and the next day, with stories and faith as her weapons. Amara deserved a fighter, and Nia would be that for her, no matter how long the battle. The hospital room was a cocoon of artificial light, its sterile hush broken only by the steady pulse of machines. Amara lay motionless, her small chest rising and falling beneath the quilted blanket, a fragile anchor in a sea of wires and tubes. The air was heavy, not just with the tang of disinfectant, but with the weight of unspoken fears. Nia sat beside the bed, her calloused hands cradling Amara's, her eyes tracing the girl's pale face as if searching for a flicker of the spark she once knew. Night after night, she'd come here, slipping in after long hours of scrubbing floors, her body weary but her spirit unyielding. This was her battlefield, and her weapons were stories, stories that could pierce the veil between worlds. Nia's voice, low and melodic, filled the space like a warm current. "Once there was a girl who danced through a storm," she began, her words deliberate, each one a brushstroke on an invisible canvas. "The winds howled, the sky roared, but she moved with such grace that the thunder fell silent just to watch her." She paused, her thumb gently stroking Amara's knuckles, willing the girl to feel the rhythm of the tale. These weren't just words, they were lifelines, spun from the stories her mother had woven into her soul, stories of ancestors who defied the odds with nothing but love and courage. Nia believed they could reach Amara, wherever she was. The room felt like a held breath, its silence both oppressive and expectant. A nurse, Maria, lingered near the door, her clipboard forgotten as she listened. Her eyes, seasoned by years of loss, softened at Nia's voice. She'd seen families give up, doctors turn away, but this, Nia's unwavering presence, was something new. Dr. Carver had dismissed it, calling any slight change in Amara's vitals statistically insignificant, but Maria had noticed the subtle shifts, a steadier heartbeat, a faint twitch in Amara's fingers when Nia spoke. She didn't dare name it a miracle, not yet, but she stayed, drawn to the quiet power unfolding before her. Nia leaned closer, her voice dropping to a whisper, intimate and fierce. "That girl in the storm? She wasn't alone. The stars sang to her, guiding her steps. You've got stars too, Amara. They're right here, in this room, waiting for you." Her words trembled with emotion, but she pressed on, refusing to let doubt creep in. She didn't care that the monitors showed no dramatic change, or that the Reynolds hadn't visited in days, their absence a cold void. Nia was here, and that was enough. She told herself Amara was listening, that somewhere beyond the silence the girl was fighting to return. Maria stepped forward, her voice barely above a whisper. I've been here 20 years, Nia. I've seen people talk to patients before, but the way you do it, it's different. It's like she's hearing you. Nia's eyes flicked up, meeting Maria's, a spark of gratitude passing between them. She is, Nia said, her voice firm. I know she is. Maria nodded, then glanced at the heart monitor. Her pulse is stronger tonight. Not much, but enough to notice. It wasn't a promise, but it was fuel, and Nia clung to it. She turned back to Amara, her stories flowing like a river now. There was another tale about a woman who carried a light no darkness could touch. She walked through shadows, and everywhere she went, flowers bloomed. Nia's voice grew richer, weaving hope into every syllable. She didn't just tell the stories, she lived them, pouring her heart into each word, as if she could will Amara back to life. Her mother had taught her that stories were more than entertainment. They were medicine, a way to heal what science couldn't touch. Nia believed it with every fiber of her being. The clock on the wall ticked past midnight, but Nia didn't falter. She spoke of a river spirit who sang to lost souls, of a child who found her way home by following a single star. Each tale was a plea, a prayer, a promise that Amara wasn't alone. Nia's throat ached, her eyes burned with unshed tears, but she kept going, her voice a beacon in the dark. She didn't see the way Maria's hands trembled, or the way the nurse quietly wiped her eyes. She saw only Amara, the girl who deserved to live, to laugh, to chase the stars again. As the night deepened, Nia's final story faded into a soft hum, an old spiritual her mother used to sing. Keep on, the light will lead you home, she murmured, her voice cracking but resolute. She squeezed Amara's hand, her heart pounding with a fierce, unspoken vow. I won't stop, not until you're back. The room was still, the machines unyielding, but Nia felt a shift, a whisper of possibility. She didn't need proof to keep going, just faith. And as she rose to leave, her shadow falling across the bed, she knew she'd return tomorrow, stories ready, to fight for Amara's soul. The hospital room was a silent witness, its sterile glow casting long shadows that seemed to pulse with secrets. Amara lay still, her small form a fragile constant amid the rhythmic hum of machines, her breath a faint mist against the oxygen mask. Nia sat by her side, her hands clasped around Amara's, her voice weaving another story, a tale of a warrior who faced a shadowed beast with only her heart as a shield. The words flowed like a quiet river, each one laced with love, a desperate offering to pull Amara back from the abyss. But tonight, the air felt heavier, charged with an unease that prickled Nia's skin. She sensed it before she heard it, a low, sharp murmur from the hallway that sliced through her focus. Nia paused mid-sentence, her story faltering as the voices grew clearer. Victor and Elaine stood just outside, their silhouettes visible through the frosted glass door, their words clipped and venomous. If she wakes, it's a problem, Victor hissed, his voice low but cutting, like a blade drawn in the dark. The trust fund, the board, they'll dig into everything. We can't afford questions. Elaine's reply was a shard of ice. She's better off this way, for her good. The words landed like a blow, stealing Nia's breath. Her hands tightened around Amara's, her heart lurching as the truth unfurled. The Reynolds didn't want their daughter to wake, not out of mercy, but for something far uglier. She forced herself to stay still, her body rigid, as if any movement might betray her eavesdropping. Her mind raced, piecing together fragments she'd ignored. The way Victor's grief always seemed performative, how Elaine's eyes avoided Amara's face, the hurried whispers she'd caught before, but dismissed as stress. The accident that had stolen Amara's light wasn't an accident at all, was it? The thought was a cold weight in her chest, a betrayal so vile it threatened to choke her. Amara, the girl who laughed at Nia's stories, who slipped her cookies under the table, was a pawn in a game of power and greed. The trust fund Victor mentioned, Nia had overheard it once, a fortune Amara would inherit at 18, must be the key. If she died, they'd control it, If she lived, their empire might crumble. Naya's pulse thundered, but she kept her face calm, her eyes on Amara. She couldn't confront them. Not yet, not without proof. Victor and Elaine's voices faded as they moved down the hall, their footsteps a retreating threat. Nia exhaled, her breath shaky, and leaned closer to Amara, her voice dropping to a fierce whisper. I heard them, sweet girl, and I swear they won't touch you. You're coming back, and I'll keep you safe. The promise burned in her throat, a vow forged in rage and love. She didn't know how she'd protect Amara, but she knew she'd fight with everything she had. Maria, the nurse who'd become Nia's quiet ally, slipped into the room, her eyes wide with concern. She'd been checking charts nearby and caught the tail end of the Reynolds conversation. Nia, she whispered, closing the door softly. Did you hear that? They're talking like... She stopped, her hand trembling as she clutched her clipboard. Nia nodded, her jaw tight. They don't want her to wake. It's about money, Maria. Power. Maria's face paled, but her resolve mirrored Nia's. I've seen things in this hospital. Families who aren't what they seem. We need to be careful, but we need to act. Nia's mind churned, her storyteller's instinct giving way to a strategist's clarity. She couldn't storm out and accuse the Reynolds. They were too powerful, their influence a web that could crush her. But she could watch, listen, and gather evidence. We need to track everything, she said, her voice low and steady. Who comes in, what they say, and every medication she's given. If they're planning something, we'll catch it. Maria nodded, her years of experience sharpening her focus. I'll check her chart, make sure nothing's off, and I'll talk to the night staff. Discreetly. Their alliance was a small spark in the darkness, but it was enough to keep Nia grounded. She turned back to Amara, her heart aching but resolute. You're stronger than their schemes, she murmured, resuming her story, as if the interruption hadn't shattered her world. The warrior faced the beast, and her heart shone brighter than its claws. Her voice was a lifeline, steady despite the storm inside her. She wouldn't let fear silence her. Each word was a shield, a reminder that Amara was worth fighting for. Nia didn't know what lay ahead, but she knew this. The Reynolds had underestimated her, and that was their mistake. She'd guard Amara's life with the ferocity of the ancestors in her stories, and no secret, no matter how dark, would stop her. The hospital room thrummed with the quiet pulse of life, its machines a chorus of persistence, their soft beeps a fragile thread holding Amara to the world. She lay still, her small hand resting in Nia's, her chest rising and falling, with the rhythm of a tide too weak to break free. Nia's voice, a steady beacon, wove through the sterile air, spinning a story of a river spirit whose song could mend broken souls. Each word was a prayer, a defiance against the darkness she'd uncovered, the chilling truth that Amara's parents wanted her gone. Nia's heart burned with purpose, her resolve sharpened by the secret she and Maria now guarded. Tonight she spoke with fiercer love, as if her stories could shield Amara from the betrayal lurking beyond the door. Nia's hands, rough from years of labor, moved gently, braiding Amara's hair into neat rows, a tender ritual to anchor them both. The river spirit, she murmured, her voice low and rich, sang to a girl lost in the mist. Her song wasn't loud, but it was true, and it led the girl home. She paused, her fingers lingering on a braid, her eyes searching Amara's face for any sign, a twitch, a flutter, that her words were reaching her. The weight of the Reynolds plot pressed against her chest, but Nia pushed it aside. Fear wouldn't win. She doubled her vigil, arriving each evening with stories and songs, her presence a quiet rebellion against those who'd written Amara off. Maria hovered nearby, her eyes darting between Amara's chart and the door, her nerves taut since their discovery. She'd taken to documenting every detail, medication doses, visitor logs, even the subtlest changes in Amara's vitals, with a precision born of suspicion. I checked her IV this morning, Maria whispered, leaning close. Everything's clean, but I don't trust them. Not after what we heard. Nia nodded, her jaw tight. They were a team now, two women standing guard over a girl the world seemed eager to forget. Maria's clipboard was their weapon, its pages a growing map of evidence they hoped would protect Amara. Nia's voice rose again, weaving a new tale of a star that burned through an endless night. That star, she said, her tone fierce yet tender, shone for one child, showing her the way when all else faded. She sang softly, an old spiritual her mother had taught her, its melody a warm thread in the cold room. Walk on. The light will carry you." Her voice cracked with emotion, but she pressed on, each note a vow to keep Amara safe. She didn't notice Maria's sudden stillness or the way the nurse's eyes widened, fixed on the heart monitor's screen. Then it happened, a moment so fragile it felt like a dream. Amara's eyelids fluttered, a faint tremor beneath her lashes, and a whisper barely audible escaped her lips. "Nia, the river, it led me back." The room froze. Nia's breath caught, her hands trembling as she leaned closer, her heart pounding so loud it drowned out the machines. Maria gasped, her clipboard clattering to the floor, the sound sharp against the silence. "Did you hear that?" Maria's voice was a mix of awe and disbelief. Nia nodded, tears welling as she gripped Amara's hand, afraid to move, afraid to break the spell. Amara's eyes opened, just a sliver, her gaze unfocused but alive, locking onto Nia's. "I heard you," she rasped, her voice weak but clear, a miracle carved from silence. "Every story, you were my light." Nia's tears fell freely now, splashing onto the blanket, her laughter mingling with sobs. "You're here, sweet girl," she whispered, her voice breaking. "You're back." Maria scrambled to call Dr. Carver, her fingers fumbling with the intercom, but Nia stayed rooted, her world narrowed to Amara's fragile awakening. Dr. Carver arrived, her skepticism a cold edge as she checked Amara's vitals, her instruments probing the impossible. "This shouldn't be happening," she muttered, her voice equal parts wonder and frustration. Her brain activity was nearly gone. She ordered tests, her clipboard a flurry of notes, but Nia barely heard her. She saw only Amara, the girl who'd defied the odds, who'd followed her stories back from the void. Maria, standing by, wiped her eyes, her smile a quiet triumph. "It's you, Nia," she said softly. "Your voice did this." Nia squeezed Amara's hand, her heart swelling with a love too vast for words. "You're stronger than they know," she murmured, her voice a vow. The moment was a spark, a glimmer of light in a battle far from won, but it was enough. Amara was awake, and Nia would fight to keep her that way, no matter what shadows waited. As the machines hummed on, their rhythm now a song of hope, Nia knew this was only the beginning. But it was a beginning worth everything. The hospital room pulsed with a fragile new energy, as if the air itself held its breath for Amara. She lay propped against pillows, her eyes half open, their hazel depths glinting with a hard-won spark of life. Her voice, though faint, was a miracle, each whispered word a defiance of the silence that had bound her for weeks. Nia sat close, her hands steady around Amara's, her heart a wildfire of relief and resolve. The machines hummed their steady hymn, but the real music was Amara's breath, shallow yet persistent, a rhythm Nia clung to like a lifeline. The truth of the Reynolds betrayal loomed, a shadow Nia could no longer ignore. But Amara's awakening had lit a fuse. The fight was far from over, and the truth was ready to speak. Nia's voice, soft but unwavering, filled the space with a quiet question. "What do you remember, sweet girl?" She kept her tone gentle, a tether to keep Amara grounded, but her pulse raced with dread. Amara's gaze drifted, her brow furrowing as fragments of memory surfaced. "I was floating," she murmured, her words halting, like pebbles skipping across a still pond. "It was dark, but your stories, they were like a song, pulling me back. The river, it was real." Nia's throat tightened, her eyes stinging as she nodded, urging Amara to go on. Every word was a victory, but Nia braced for what might come next. Then Amara's voice dropped, a tremor threading through it. "I heard them. My parents. They said, if I woke up, it would ruin things. They sounded cold." The confession hung heavy, a blade slicing through the room's fragile hope. Nia's breath caught, her worst fears confirmed. Amara's memory, even in her coma, had caught the Reynolds' chilling calculations. Proof their betrayal wasn't just suspicion, but fact. Nia squeezed her hand, her voice fierce yet tender. "You're safe now. I won't let them hurt you." Her promise was a vow carved in stone, unyielding against the storm she knew was coming. Maria, stationed by the door, stiffened, her eyes wide with alarm. She'd been listening, her clipboard clutched like a shield, her years in the hospital sharpening her instincts. "That's enough to act on," she whispered, stepping closer. "If she heard them, it's evidence. We need to move fast." Nia nodded, her mind racing. The Reynolds' wealth and influence were a fortress, but Amara's words were a crack in its foundation. Maria's resolve mirrored Nia's, their alliance a quiet force against the power that sought to bury Amara. "I know a lawyer," Maria said, her voice low. "Someone who's taken on cases like this. She'll listen." Nia's heart pounded, but she kept her focus on Amara, stroking her hair with a tenderness that belied her fury. "You're so brave," she murmured, her voice a lifeline. "You came back, and now we're going to keep you safe." Amara's lips curved in a faint smile, her trust in Nia a light that pierced the darkness. But her eyes held a flicker of fear, and Nia knew the weight of what lay ahead. They needed proof, something concrete to unravel the Reynolds scheme before they could strike again. Maria slipped out to make a call, her footsteps quick and purposeful, leaving Nia alone with Amara. Nia hummed a soft spiritual, its melody a shield against the fear creeping into her bones. She thought of her mother, whose stories had taught her that truth was a weapon, sharper than any blade. Amara's memory was that weapon now, but it needed sharpening. Nia leaned closer, her voice a conspiratorial whisper. "If you remember anything else, anything at all, you tell me. We're in this together." Amara nodded, her small hand tightening around Nia's, a silent pact forged in the fire of survival. When Maria returned, her face was grim but determined. "The lawyer's name is Carla. She's meeting us tomorrow, off the record. She says if we can document Amara's statement and find any evidence of tampering, medications, the accident, she can build a case." Nia's resolve hardened, her fear giving way to a fierce clarity. "Then we document everything," she said. "Every word, every visitor, every dose." Maria nodded, already flipping through her notes, her pen a quiet rebellion against the Reynolds' power. Dr. Carver entered, her presence a jolt of skepticism. She'd been summoned after Amara's awakening, her tests confirming the impossible. Amara's brain activity was surging, defying every prognosis. "I don't understand it," she admitted, her voice clipped but shaken. "There's no medical reason for this." Nia met her gaze, her smile small but unyielding. "Sometimes love is the reason." Carver's brow furrowed, but she didn't argue, her clipboard falling silent. Nia turned back to Amara, her heart swelling with a truth louder than science. Amara's voice was awake, and it would not be silenced. The Reynolds secret was exposed, and Nia would wield it like a torch, burning away their lies to keep Amara safe. The hospital room, once a prison of sterile whispers, now hummed with the faint pulse of victory. Amara sat propped against pillows, her eyes brighter each day, her small hands clutching a sketchbook where she drew rivers and stars. Her recovery was a quiet miracle, a defiance of the shadows that had nearly claimed her. Nia sat beside her, her voice a gentle current, recounting a story of a bird that soared after a storm. But her heart carried a fiercer rhythm, fueled by the truth Amara's awakening had unleashed. The Reynolds' betrayal laid bare, their empire trembling under the weight of an impending investigation. Nia's fight had shifted from saving Amara's life to securing her future, and she would not rest until the girl was free. Amara's words, fragile but piercing, had set everything in motion. Her memories of her parents' cold plotting, overheard in the fog of her coma, were a spark that Nia and Maria had fanned into a flame. With Carla, the lawyer, they'd built a case. Amara's testimony, Maria's meticulous records, and whispers of tampered brakes in the accident that had nearly killed her. The police were circling, their questions sharpening, and the Reynolds' polished facade was cracking. Victor and Elaine had withdrawn, their visits to the hospital replaced by lawyers and terse phone calls. Nia felt their absence like a storm retreating, but she knew the danger wasn't gone, only delayed. She leaned closer to Amara, her fingers braiding the girl's hair with a tenderness that steadied them both. "You're a warrior," she murmured, her voice warm but fierce. "You came back, and now we're building something new." Amara's smile was small but radiant, her trust in Nia a lifeline. She'd been moved to her aunt's care, a kind woman who welcomed Nia's daily visits, recognizing the bond that had saved her niece. The trust fund, a fortune the Reynolds had schemed to control, was frozen, its fate tied to the investigation. Amara was safe for now, but Nia's heart burned with a larger vision, a way to honor this miracle. The seed had been planted in the hospital, in those endless nights of stories and songs. Nia saw the kids she'd left behind, the ones who faced hunger and fear with no one to sing them home. Amara's recovery wasn't just a personal triumph. It was a call to carry that light further. Nia had scraped together every dollar she could, selling her mother's old radio, skipping meals, and pooling tips from odd jobs. With Maria's help and a small grant Carla secured, she'd rented a storefront, a cramped, dusty space that smelled of mildew but pulsed with possibility. She named it River of Light, a beacon for children like Amara, like the ones Nia had grown up with, who needed hope as much as bread. Nia threw herself into the work, her hands painting the walls a vibrant yellow that seemed to defy the gloom outside. She hauled in second-hand books, art supplies, and a battered piano, each item a piece of her dream. Amara, now strong enough to visit, came with her cane, her laughter a melody as she helped. Together they painted a mural on the main wall, a black woman standing by a glowing river, her hands outstretched, stars swirling above. Beneath it, in bold letters, they wrote, "Love is the miracle." The words were a vow, a reminder of what had brought Amara back and what would carry them forward. Maria stopped by, her nurse's scrubs swapped for jeans, her eyes shining as she surveyed the space. "This is it, Nia," she said, her voice thick with pride. "You're giving them what you gave her, a reason to keep going." Nia nodded, her throat tight. The center would offer storytelling workshops, music lessons, therapy sessions, and hot meals. Things Nia had craved as a child, but rarely found. She'd hired a counselor, a friend of Carla's, and convinced local artists to volunteer. It wasn't much, not yet, but it was a start, a spark in a world that too often snuffed out dreams. Amara, her cane tapping softly, added a final stroke to the mural. A tiny bird flying toward the stars. "This is for you," she said, her voice steady despite her frailty. "For all the stories." Nia's eyes stung, her heart swelling with a love that felt boundless. She hugged Amara, careful not to squeeze too hard, and whispered, "It's for all of us, sweet girl." The center was more than a building. It was a testament to what faith and love could do, a river of light flowing from Amara's miracle to every child who needed it. As the sun dipped low, Nia stood alone in the finished space, her hands tracing the mural's edges. The Reynolds shadow still loomed, their lawyers fighting to bury the truth, but Nia felt no fear. She'd faced worse and won. River of Light was her answer to their darkness, a place where stories would heal and love would triumph. She closed her eyes, her mother's voice echoing, "Keep singing, Nia. The river always listens." And she would, for Amara, for the kids, for the light that refused to fade. The hospital room, once a battleground of fear and hope, was now a distant memory, its sterile walls replaced by the vibrant pulse of a new beginning. Amara stood on a small stage, her cane resting against a chair, her hands gripping a microphone with a courage that belied her fragile frame. Her eyes, bright with life, scanned the crowd gathered in the freshly painted space of River of Light. The air thrummed with anticipation. Voices hushed as children, parents, and volunteers filled the room, their faces alight with pride. Nia stood to the side, her heart a drumbeat of joy and resolve, her denim jacket swapped for a simple blue dress that felt like armor. Today was the opening of her dream, a testament to the miracle that had brought Amara back and the love that would carry them forward. Amara's voice, clear despite its softness, cut through the quiet. "This place is for everyone who's ever felt lost," she said, her words steady, a beacon forged in the fire of her survival. "Nia showed me the way home with her stories. Now we're here to share that light." The crowd erupted in applause, but Nia's eyes were on Amara, the girl who defied death and betrayal to stand here, a living miracle. The Reynolds shadow lingered, their investigation ongoing, their influence still a threat. but Amara's strength was a flame that no darkness could extinguish. Nia's chest swelled with a fierce pride, her fight now a shared victory. The mural on the wall, a black woman by a glowing river, stars above, and the words, "Love is the miracle," seemed to pulse with life, a silent witness to their journey. Nia had poured everything into this center, her savings, her sleepless nights, her mother's stories. It was more than a building, it was a promise to every child who'd known hunger, fear, or abandonment. The space buzzed with possibility, tables piled with books, a corner for art, a piano waiting for small hands. Volunteers, some drawn by news of Amara's recovery, others by Nia's quiet fire, moved through the crowd, offering food and smiles. Maria, her nurse's precision now guiding logistics, gave Nia a nod, her eyes shining with shared triumph. Reporters hovered at the edges, their cameras flashing, their questions eager. "How did you do it?" one asked Nia, her pen poised. "How did you bring her back?" Nia's smile was soft but unyielding. "It wasn't just me. It was love, faith, and a girl who refused to give up." Her voice carried a quiet power, each word a stone in the foundation of River of Light. Amara, stepping down from the stage, added, "Nia's stories were my map. She's my family now." The words landed like a vow, and the crowd's murmurs grew, a ripple of awe at the bond that had defied science and greed. Nia hugged Amara, her heart aching with a love too vast for words, a love that had rewritten their fates. The ceremony unfolded with music and laughter, children darting between tables, their voices a joyful chaos. Nia moved through it all, her presence a calm anchor, her eyes catching the small miracles. A boy clutching a new book, a mother wiping tears as she thanked a volunteer. But beneath her calm, a fire burned. The Reynolds lawyers were still fighting, their wealth a weapon to bury the truth about the tampered brakes and their cold calculations. Carla, the lawyer, had warned Nia to stay vigilant, but today Nia chose to celebrate. This moment, this place, was her defiance, a light they couldn't snuff out. As the event wound down, Nia slipped outside, needing a moment to breathe. The evening air was cool, the sky a tapestry of fading light. She paused, her fingers tracing the locket at her neck, her mother's voice echoing, "Keep singing, Nia." A woman approached, her hands full of flowers, her face weathered but kind. Without a word, she pressed a note into Nia's hand, then vanished into the crowd. Nia unfolded it, her breath catching at the shaky script. "Keep telling the stories. The river always listens." The words were a jolt, a whisper from a world beyond her own, and Nia tucked the note into her pocket, her heart pounding with a truth she couldn't name. She returned inside, finding Amara at the mural, her fingers tracing the painted river. "This is forever, isn't it?" Amara asked, her voice soft but certain. Nia nodded, her eyes glistening. "Forever, sweet girl. We'll keep the light burning." The crowd had thinned, but the energy remained, a hum of hope that filled the space. River of Light was alive, its doors open to anyone who needed it, its stories a bridge from darkness to dawn. Nia stood tall, her mother's legacy flowing through her, knowing that love's echo would resonate long after the day was done, a song no silence could drown. As the echoes of Nia and Amara's story linger, we invite you to reflect on the power of love, faith, and resilience that turned darkness into light. What did their journey stir in you? Share your thoughts, your own stories, or the moments that inspire you to keep singing through the storms. Thank you for joining us in this tale of miracles and courage. We're grateful for your presence. Until we meet again, may you carry a river of light in your heart, ready to shine for those who need it most.